This episode of Untold Stories is sponsored by Public.com and Ledin.io. You'll hear more about them later on in this episode. What is up, everyone? I am Charlie Shrem. You are listening and watching Untold Stories, where twice a week together we get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders to really understand how this movement came to be, where we're going, some of the coolest things that happen, stories that we overlook, people that we need to meet. That's what Untold Stories is, and we have some fun along the way. And I'm very excited to have on the show Misha. Thank you so much. Misha Goroshevsky, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. It's Mitya, but Charlie. it's okay because it's unpronounceable, I know.
Mitya.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're the co-founder and CTO of Ton Labs. You're focusing on the core technical infrastructure for free Ton. And what's been really great is that over the last, few months, you guys have like 99% replaced 99% of the old Ton blockchain that was coming out of the ashes of Telegram. And it's a whole new community. It's a whole new project. It's a whole new everything. And you guys have been growing by leaps and bounds with the Ton Crystal. And so I'm excited to talk about some of the things that have been happening over the last few months and few years. But really, tell me about yourself. How did you get into crypto and how did you get to be in where you are today?
Yeah. Well, it's a long story. To make it short, I did some decentralized database designs based on distributed tables and like stuff like that. And so, of course, because of that, we kind of looked all the time at what's happening in space around. And in very early, I think, 2010, I think, we got aware of the Bitcoin white paper and the network, started to look into that. And then I was just fascinated. So it was early. And then, but Bitcoin was great as an idea. But you couldn't do much about that, right? With that, as a engineer, you couldn't really build a lot. And later, when Ethereum obviously came in, then it started to be interesting in terms of developing stuff on top of that. And that's where I really got involved, more heavily day by day, and built some stuff on Ethereum, and then met with some of other co-founders of the Ton Labs, and they said, "Listen, there is a nice little project Telegram is doing. Don't you want to kind of be involved?" And I said, "Well, let me read something," because nothing was published. And they got me the white paper, the technical one. And I said, "Well, that's really interesting," because the design at that time was really cutting edge. It was like following Polkadot in a way, but making it tightly coupled, and by that changing everything. So it was really first sharding in a two-word sense of word. Technically, it was really great idea, and I said, well, I want to participate, want to do something. That's how it all started.
And what were the first things that you did in the space?
Well, we started to develop virtual machine, our own implementation. We said from the beginning there need to be second implementation of the node first. So we started in Rust. Telegram team did in C++. We just started to implement the node, the network protocols, virtual machine and stuff like that. And then on top of that, we started to build some developer tools and compilers, because we knew that once the developer wants to develop, they won't, do that on assembler language.
I actually wanted to ask you about C++ and Rust. It seems like Rust is one of the de facto languages that is being used now across a lot of different blockchains. I know that Ethereum had tried to write its own language, Solidity, and over the past few months, I've learned that Rust is definitely up there as the top. Is that something younger entrepreneurs you think should be learning if they want to be able to work in our blockchain space?
Well, there is a tool, there are two questions in one, because what Ethereum, Solidity is a language for a smart contract, and smart is a system level language where you write the system level software, not necessarily, it wasn't built for smart contracts. So there is two questions. One is, why do we use Rust in building system level, like nodes, writing protocols and stuff? And another, should we use Rust as a language for smart contracts? And it's two very different questions. But yeah, Rust is a great language. Has a lot of it's very C-like language, but without it's a modern language, so it doesn't have this pitfalls of some other system level languages, and there is a lot of security features in Rust which you want to use particularly when you're building like infrastructure projects like blockchain.
You understand scaling. Your background, you were involved in one of the first voice over IPs, international voice over IP companies. You understand what it takes to have, on building new technology on top of old technology, because I'm sure when you were working on voice over IP, you were probably banging your head against the wall because the internet as we built it was not really built to handle what we're doing today. We're building the whole new Web 3.0. How are we looking at scaling, kind of going into that? Should Rust be, what should we be using for smart contract language? But how, are we looking at scaling all wrong? And I ask this because you have a lot of new layer ones launching, a lot of them every single day. And I'm trying to understand why they're looking at scaling wrong and why you understand scaling in a better way.
Well, I don't want to comparing us with some others, because there are great projects out there which
Yeah,
I
of
like
course.
personally a lot. Like Solana, I really love the design. But the thing is that the problem is, can you really scale like almost limitlessly? Like, can you really? That is very important point, because if you have a limit, then there is a certain price that someone can pay to buy out your network. In terms of like, if you're making gas really cheap, for example, then I can take some money, buy a lot of your coins, and pay your network to just shut it up. If you have that limit in the end, right, then you have the limit of the total price that someone can pay for to stop your network. If you don't have that limit, then this attack is not possible anymore. So even from that perspective, it is quite important that you have really, but for me, scalability means that you can scale as much as you want, basically to the scale of the internet. Like, think of Amazon Cloud. Like Amazon, you don't, when you order a new server in Amazon Cloud, you don't think that they will run out.
Yeah.
You don't think they will stop, right? So that architecture
No more servers
scales.
today.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, like we can't accommodate you anymore. We stop here. So you don't see that, right? Why don't you want to do the same thing with the block? Like, you need to do the same thing with the blockchain, particularly with the blockchain, because you have the self-sustainable decentralized infrastructure. There is no manager who would tell to order new servers or anything like that. It's all economy, right? If you live in this economical paradigm of new economy, you need to scale it limitlessly from within the protocol itself. And I believe there is only one design who can do that, and currently, and that is Freeton.
Is this kind of going into the blockchain trilemma problem, which is when it comes to decentralized, scalable, and secure? But this is crazy. This problem, I remember hearing about it for the first time, but not really understanding why it's a problem. There's a guy, his name is Luke Jr. And Luke just got kicked off crypto Twitter, by the way, and I hope Jack brings him back. Well, everyone's allowed to have their own opinions, but he's been around Bitcoin since before me even, and he's been like steadfast. But I remember when Eric Voorhees launched Satoshi Dice back in the early days, and Satoshi Dice on top of Bitcoin, Luke didn't like it and was very against it on the Bitcoin forums, because the way he saw it was, this is spamming the network. But Eric was saying, hey, this is a free market. Anyone can pay transaction fees. If I'm paying a little bit more to have my Satoshi Dice transactions go ahead of everything else, that's a product, that's a feature, not a bug. But as we scale, I can see now how blockchains can be taken over that way, especially ones that are built on super, super cheap speeds and highly, highly fast scalable. How do you solve this problem? I mean, how do you?
By scaling more or less linearly whenever you have the new transaction that someone wants to put and ready to pay even the small amount of gas, it need to be enough incentives for new validators to join and provide his power to the network. And the most important, which is not happening right now, is that even if you provide a lot of power to the networks that exist today, it won't scale with this power. It will just divide all the time the money between you.
Yeah.
So the money will be less, and so it doesn't scale. You can add as many miners as you want to Bitcoin, it won't scale. So you need a design that will scale with the new server joining the network.
How do you handle distribution in a situation like this?
If someone wants to make more transactions, he's ready to pay for them. So these transactions need to be need to pay for the new power joining the network. The problem is not that. The problem is not how do you pay. The real problem is that it doesn't scale. Again, the real problem which we have in all of the designs with all of the blockchains we have today is it doesn't matter how many servers you will add, it won't scale past a certain point. So the question is really, how do you make it scalable without any limit, basically?
And I guess the answer is that you figure out the transaction fee size, the transaction fee amount, distribution, how you scale, the method in which the blockchain scales, all kind of has to happen at the same time.
Exactly.
You can't have one side of the boat being risen. It's like you're bringing the boat out of the water. It needs to all rise together. Is that something that you would say is kind of the constitution of a blockchain, where it's like baked in the same way that 21 million is baked into the Bitcoin code, how things are done? Is this, or you'll have the other side where you'll have developers come and say that blockchains need to be constantly in real time changeable and upgradable?
It should be constantly changeable and upgradable, and you need to provide a way for that to kind of transform into what developers want from one perspective. But the most important, that there should be an underlying protocol or protocols that allow for this scalability, first of all. And then, of course, once it scales, then anyone can take any segment of this network, build whatever they want on that, right? As long as they pay gas. What's the problem? Then there is no problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And what has happened now is there's like an ecosystem of different products and services and companies within Ton that, you have like the basics, like the swap tools and the decentralized exchanges, but in unlocking that power of decentralized finance, what other tools are we building for 1 year from now? What do people want? Are we looking at, issuing debt as NFTs? What type of products and services are we building for the future?
Well, I look at this. Well, I'm sorry, because I'm like from the infrastructure side, the core developer. So I look at that from slightly different perspective.
Sure.
What happens if you build some instrument and then it's stuck because the transaction on Uniswap? I think one of my colleagues said to me that he traded just a few days ago, traded on Uniswap and paid $500 for a trade. Like,
yeah.
I mean, this is not sustainable, guys. I mean, right now, when you have 300% revenue coming to you, yield, then it's no problem for you to pay $500. But wait a second, that's not going to happen forever. We know that it's a law. Economics, it's a science. They have some laws. So you cannot continue doing this like 300% APY, whatever. So you won't be able to pay 500% or $500 per transaction. So then, so you're coming to DEX, like DEX on Freeton, for example, and you pay almost zero for transaction, right? But then we have a lot of trades. And then we have a lot of trades, and now, so now you scale. But the thing is, it's not stopping here. Okay, you provided basic layer for scalability, but the problem is it's not really, in order for write something on the platform like that, you need to write it a little bit differently. It's not, you cannot take for example, ERC20 smart contract from Ethereum and just put it on Freeton and say, okay, now it scales infinitely. No, it won't like that, because the ERC20 itself, like the smart contracts, how you write them today on almost any blockchain, their design sucks. Sorry, it's just not correct.
The same problems
Yeah.
that Ethereum is
Yeah.
having today is the same problem that Bitcoin had 4 or 5 years ago. But if you had these developers had all this time to figure out better solutions and the Vitaliks of the world and all the people, why still is it a running joke that there's no like, next level of Ethereum where scaling has been figured out? It's a slow progression.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm leading towards is when you have already a group of people who are making a lot of money in the current system, what's the incentive to move over to the new system? And so furthermore, when you're designing a blockchain from scratch, or you're not from scratch, but when you're at the earliest, where you're at the first like 2 years of a blockchain's existence, you have to look at it from like a technology perspective, like yourself. You also have to look at it from a game theory, socioeconomic perspective, because they go hand in hand. And this is brand new. This never existed. Did you take economics classes? Like, developers probably, well, you don't have to answer that because maybe you did. But the point is, like,
I did.
there was no, but there was no, however, now it's like you got to sit in these meetings and almost like, well, okay, if we do this, if we make this number, how will people react to that are involved in the community? It's like, it's very exhausting.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is exhausting because it's completely new world. Like this is new economy. We're inventing new economy. It happened 100+ years ago the last time. It's hard to do, and particularly like condensed way like this, with the boundaries that are well defined and
Yeah.
regulators well out of them, which is great, by the way. But yeah, I mean, it takes time. It just takes time. This thing takes time. It doesn't matter how many smart people you put in whatever. It takes time to figure out how to do that. And when you said to move to the new layer one, why it would happen? It's a classical innovator's dilemma. This is nothing new, right? Because okay, first of all, you move there because some applications just won't run there, and you move there to start new applications. Like we have use cases for like, where you simply cannot do that. Like you cannot do order book decentralized exchange on Ethereum. People tried, failed miserably because you cannot do that there. So for some, you start using that for some use cases, and then you realize, people will realize, and okay, so let's move more there because it's cheaper and better, and run faster, and the response time is faster, and so on and so forth. It's just better experience. And then in the end, what will happen is that they will say, but why we actually need this other layer one, which is old and, and not moving really. That's always happening.
And then you end up having like multiple forks of different things because there's going to be a group of people there, I know already are, that want Ethereum to continue proof of work. So I understand this whole thing, the system about moving over, but at the same time, doesn't that open up the ability to have the future? There's going to be a war with Ethereum. Like there's going to be a name war. There's going to be which one is called Ethereum. There's going to be a lot of money and PR money spent, public relations to call, like it's going to make the Bitcoin civil war or whatever, debate of back in 2017 seem like nothing. I mean, that war took place over chat rooms. That the Bitcoin, Bitcoin upgrading to 2 megabytes back in 2017 was probably the biggest chasm. It created Bitcoin Cash because that group wanted to upgrade. But what was funny was
I made a few dollars on that.
What was funny about this situation is that it took place in chat rooms and Slack and Telegram and all these different places. And when they had an attempt to get everyone in a room to try to like hash it out, but you get a bunch of like, socially awkward people like myself in a room to have political and diplomatic debates. It doesn't work. We might as well just get back on our computers in the same room and talk about it on the keyboards. But at the same time, it taught a lot of lessons that together is better than separate. So I hope that is figured out. Guys, we need to talk about how to use your Bitcoin and your USDC to earn you interest and make you more money. To do that, we're going to talk about our newest sponsor, Ledn.io, a much better home for your Bitcoin. They're amazing. They're a secure, simple, and easy to use platform for managing and growing your digital wealth. On Ledin, you can earn interest on your Bitcoin and on your USDC with some of the industry's best rates. Earn 6.1% APY on your first 2 Bitcoin and 9% on all of your USDC. That's right, all you need to do is deposit your coins and you'll receive steady payouts at the end of each month just for leaving your coins with them. 6.1% on Bitcoin is pretty huge. You don't find that same kind of return elsewhere without taking a much greater risk. And 9% on your USDC, think about what kind of rate you'll get if you had dollars sitting in your bank's savings account. Probably almost nothing. If you've got dollar savings sitting around, this seems like a no-brainer. All you need to do to sign up with Ledin is send a bit of Bitcoin or USDC their way and then sit back and let the interest accrue. So what are you waiting for? Go to untoldstories.link/Ledin to start earning interest on your Bitcoin or USDC today. That's untoldstories.link/Ledin. You're going to love them. Enjoy. We're all used to investing in different types of cryptos, and we know that you can buy as little as $1 worth of any coin or token, but you can't do the same thing with stocks, bonds, and ETFs and all those other like traditional assets. And then if you can't do it all in the same place. Our newest sponsor, Public.com, it's a super awesome community where they take your privacy seriously, and you can get in there and trade slices of crypto, Bitcoin, all different coins and tokens, and also stocks, bonds, ETFs, equities, and it's all done in the same place. What I love about it is that you have all these different investors you can connect with all walks of life, gain confidence, ask questions, get the big picture with curated themes, talk to everyone, but they don't get involved in the order flow. They're not selling your data to all these other middlemen. And we got a very good special for you, my listeners, today. If you go to public.com/untold stories and you start investing with $1, they're going to give you up to $50 in a free stock, a slice of a stock. That's all you got to do. Download the app, $1, you get $50 worth. Public.com/untold stories, valid for U.S. residents, 18 plus only, subject to account approval. And make sure you check out public.com/disclosures. There's no investment advice here. These guys have been doing and amalgamating all of these different types of community, stock, bonds, ETFs, cryptos all together. Make sure you check it all out. Public.com/untold stories. What is this metaverse thing? We've been building this metaverse for 10 years. We've been building the rails of it, the underbelly. But now the world is waking up to the Facebook is rebranding as Meta, which is going to be seen as this huge watershed moment in the future. But what the hell what is this? How do you explain it to people who have no idea what it is?
I really don't want to know. I don't give a shit. I mean, I know what we call it Web3 because Web3 is kind of, it has some problems with centralization layer on the web. Like we call it Web3, so we go without web. I don't know. I know.
You have a good point. You have a good point. Anything built on the current, to not use general vague terms, but anything built on the current internet as we know it today can't be Web3. So how do you build the metaverse? This world where nothing is fast forward, rewound, paused. You wake up in the world and it's the next day or whatever, and you can own land on there. How can you build it on, what we're doing today? Because, for example, you can't even have your applications on your phone interact with each other in not even in a centralized way. For example, if you want to have your Uber app talk to your alarm app, talk to this and be able transactions, and then the taxes are paid on chain to the city. We're not even there yet. So how can
we are actually. We are. It's called Compound. We are in the blockchain space. We are. Our smart contracts talking to each other. You can make multiple transactions within a chain of a contract and gets like in the middle of that, get some loans and repay and whatnot, buy some assets. Yeah, exactly. We already doing that. I think what it's called now, Meta, is just trying to jump on this marketing blah blah, which Mark did successfully for all these years. I hope he is not getting into any closer to decentralized world because he cannot. He cannot because he's completely centralized. It's all around Mark, right?
Yeah. So what he's learning and what we're all. I know. I know it doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, Amazon is going to run out of servers for Meta, so you can't
Mhm.
you can't log on or like.
Exactly.
Okay, so like we're 30 years from now, and there's uh dozens of blockchains, and you have you have one that's a billion verified users are using this every single day. What does that scaled blockchain look like? What is that scaled layer one? Is it multiple layers? Is it threaded? Is it processor kind of set up in a processor way? Is it unspent inputs and outputs, just like Bitcoin is? Is it sharding? Like, what does that blockchain look like 30 years from now with a billion verified users?
There is no other way to do it rather than sharding. Like you cannot do it otherwise. Period. Just let's stop just here. No, UTXO, it's fine. ETXO is just a way to basically count money.
Yeah.
But no, it's of course it's a smart contract base because you want to write applications on top of it, right? You have to write applications. And so it's a smart contract platform, whatever smart contract will mean by that time. And it's a like multi-threaded, multi-sharded environment like we're building. I cannot see past that point because we like there is a computer science behind us, right? There is a I always uh, think of a blockchain layer one as of a processor. Think of it as a processor. We had a single threaded processors, like single core processors, and then we moved from that because the single core, like just physically cannot process more than a certain amount. And then we started to have multi-core, multi-threaded processors, and that's what we're using today. There is no other way. We don't know in computer science. We currently don't know the other way. Maybe like optical computer, something like, but we didn't discover that. And so there is only one way to really scale if you really want to pass that one thread, right? And that's multi-core thing. And multi-core in blockchain means sharded, multi-sharded, multi-threaded environment. So I just don't know the other way to scale.
Can you explain sharding to me in a little bit more detail? Because as I understand it, it's taking like horizontal headers or pieces of a block, and that is what's being broadcast instead of the whole block itself, to use simple terms.
Well, that would be really simple, but not correct. Meaning, yes, it is correct partly. You need also to prove somehow to all the rest of the network that the header that you transmit doesn't that the block that which header you transmitted did not contain any wrong. It wasn't wrong block. Okay,
Oh,
you need to prove that it's correct block somehow, and that's really all the debate about how to build sharding is about and how to prove to everyone that I cannot send the whole block because and I cannot and other validator, whatever call it master chain, beacon chain, doesn't matter. They cannot run all the blocks and verify because otherwise then you don't have any more sharding, right? So you need to somehow make it so that anyone in the network will believe that the header of the block you sent is representing the block which is correct. And all the designs that you now know whatever near
yeah.
Ethereum 2.0 whatever they all talk about the same thing basically. It's just how you approach that.
Is that what
But
it
okay,
comes
so
down
in
to?
database it's on a consensus level, yes, more or less. If you talk about what is sharding is a database term, and it means that you basically split the data. So not a single node doesn't need to have all the data. That's what sharding means. But there's another thing we need. It's not only sharding. We also need to parallelize computation, and it's even more important sometimes. Actually, like Ethereum 2.0 right now is building sharding in a way of sharding the data because they have a really huge state they want to shard it. But that is not enough because in order to make performance-wise, like if you think again about Intel processor inside your machine right now, it actually parallelizes computation. It take program, execute them in parallel on two cores and the two threads, whatever, and it executed in parallel. So that allows like what we call, I don't know, multi-window stuff that you run, multi-application, and whatever, right? You need to do the same thing. And we call it multi-threading because that is really like what it's called in computer science, multi-threading. So you need to parallelize, you need to split the data and then parallelize computations. And there is simply no other way. But when you parallelize computation, again, you need to prove that the computation someone did in a group of validators that did this computation without validating the computation itself by all other nodes, you need to prove to every other node that the computation was executed correctly. And that's really what it is, in essence.
Wow. I mean, you're building out multi-threaded, multi-layered, the ability to have constant communications and different smart contracts talking to each other in real time, but then the data itself is or the reference to the data is what's being shared more in real time. So how that's encrypted and how that's shared is what is most important, it seems like.
You touched upon a very, very good point. There is, of course, it doesn't stop there. Yeah, you need a messaging. You need to communicate between all these pieces that running on a separate piece of data with a separate computational engine on top of that. And you need them to talk to each other somehow. So first of all, it implies that it's asynchronous. Unlike Ethereum, whereas all the programming is synchronous, like you try to execute basically everything at once and get the result of this execution. Doesn't matter how many smart contracts you need to involve in that. You cannot do that with sharding. In Ethereum, when they introduce sharding, they also will need to move away from this synchronous model. You won't be able to do that anymore. You need to go asynchronous. So one node executing something on one data is talking to another node who executed something else on another data, and they all understand that the message that they get need to be correct from other node perspective. This is huge. All these are it's problem. So for example, Polkadot, up until now, I don't think they have. Maybe they did, but last time I looked, they didn't have even the messaging between this parachains running, because I don't think they thought that they will ever need that, because so you give someone a blockchain,
that's the most important
let
thing
them run
for
an
me.
application. Yeah, let them run the application on this parachain network or just one blockchain. And then, so what do we do when we need to pass this message to another application of another person to make a compound, whatever we want to build? How do we do that? Because that also needs to scale. Remember, if you have if you imagine how processor chip inside looks, there is the high-speed buses between all these cores, because these cores need to pass the messages. Right, and it's also a thread manager there somewhere, which also manages this whole thing, because messages, you cannot just pass messages in random fashion. There are some protocols that you need to follow.
It comes down to a hardware problem then.
No. We are talking about virtual processors here, so it's not a hardware problem. We can it's all virtualized on top of normal hardware. So no, thanks God. We don't have
with the supply chain problem that's happening now.
Yeah, so, no. We don't want to go there.
What's intriguing about this about the Tom blockchain now is that the token distribution is a little bit different. Tokens are distributed to those who are involved in the ecosystem, who are through grants and through partnerships and things like that. And so what happens is, because people have to earn it, there's this buying and selling pressure that actually stays relatively stable. And so my question to you is, are we looking at stable coins all wrong? Are we looking at stable coins as references to a fiat coin? Is that incorrect? Or should stable coins be the representation of a perfect economy of buying and selling pressure and utility? Does that seem like where we're going to be 30 years from now? That blockchain that has 1 billion users is not going to be, their token may not reference something else. Rather, it'll be stable because the ecosystem is perfected.
It won't be stable. The word stable is deceiving. That's the point.
Okay.
Because if you, I had this work called Notaton Binary System about stable coins. I wrote it with Andrei Lashin, great Russian mathematician. Now, the thing is, if we think about money, first of all, it's a wrong assumption that the money, combines three values: the unit of exchange, unit of account, the store of value, and the method of payment. You cannot have three in one, period, and you don't, right? Because if you look at the US dollar, it lost its value for the last 100 years all the time, right? And it's completely, and they're continuing doing that. Well, how is that store of value then? So, it's a method of payment, and as such, it needs actually to devaluate. Well, think of like you don't want to buy pizza with Bitcoin. Same way, what you want to buy,
Oh, because it
what you want to use,
appreciates.
yes, what you want to use to buy pizza is something that depreciates. Only if it's depreciating all the time, you want to really give it away all the time, and that's how economy is actually subsidized, incentivized, because people wants to they earn the money because it's devaluates. They want to buy stuff with it as fast as possible, and also, by the way, take credit, because why not? It's devaluates. Right? So if you talk about payment system, that's why I think, by the way, Bitcoin made it all wrong with Lightning Network. That's why I think it will never work, because it doesn't matter how you slice, dice, make it fast. I don't want to pay with my Bitcoin for coffee. Pardon my French. I really don't want to do that.
But I could, if I could mint the ability instantly mint or borrow against it in a decentralized way, then I would do that on a high level potentially.
If you could repay and take it back, yes.
Yeah, yeah. If there's a
Of course.
decentralized way, then you could mint your own stable coins.
But for that, you need to mint something which will.
Yeah, you need to mint something
right?
deflationary. And your point is that
Yes.
money is inherently deflationary. I think I think I agree with that over time. I think I agree with that. I know I agree with that. And if you look at history, it's true.
Yeah, well, we decoupled from gold for that particular reason, because we couldn't create enough money to sustain the economic growth without decoupling from gold, because gold was inherently, like, what it did is like basically constrained us with this devaluation that we needed in the economy, and so they decoupled it with gold and they made a deflationary thing. But now they sell us the story that you need to save also this. Well, that's bullshit. Like, this is total bullshit. You don't want to save dollars.
So what's the future? Do you have like two currencies? Do you have one that appreciates and one that depreciates, and you can transfer between the two?
Yes. Exactly.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah. That's it. That's why we call it not a TON binary system, but basically proposal for two tokens, TON, which is deflationary, which is deflationary, and then not, which is inflationary. So one will lose the value, another will gain the value. And that's it, because something you want to make for payments and something you want to make to store a value.
Does it split? Do you get more of them as it loses value, or does it just lose value and you inherently want to spend it that way? Is that kind of how it works?
You want to spend it. Yeah, you want to spend it, because remember, why do we use dollars and stablecoin? It's really easy, because because there are like economists and central banks and Federal Reserves, whenever, and they are doing all the job of actually counting for how much inflation do we have or need. Because what you really want to do, well, trying very bad, but they're trying at least. But you like, we in the blockchain, we don't want even to try. Because like better them doing that, because you need to take the real economy, like all the trade, the whole trade of the world. You need to take that, and you need to take that into the account of the what you want to do with this currency that you want to lose the value. You need to realize how much the economy grew, for how much value you want to lose in this money. Yeah, we cannot count that today, for a very simple reason, because not all the payments and all the businesses are on the blockchain. If they would, and I hope they will someday, then inside the blockchain, we will have immutable data on top of which algorithms, smart contracts, can count what and how much minting we need to do. And we won't need any Federal Reserve or central banks anymore. We just fire them.
Yeah. Mitya Gorushevsky, the CTO of Free TON, thank you so much for coming on Untold Stories, this special sponsored live edition of Untold Stories. I love doing these. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Look at what we've learned and what we've together taught a lot of people on this show today. So thank you again for that. And I'm excited to have you back on the show soon, and we'll talk more about what's been going on.
Thank you, Charlie. It's really a pleasure being here, talking to you. Hope we meet in person one day.
Yeah, I can't wait.